All right. Call to order the Monday, April 8th meeting of the Arlington Redevelopment Board, recorded by ACMi. Here tonight to discuss the draft report to town meeting. I think everyone has had an opportunity to take a look at it, so we can have a discussion amongst ourselves. As we move through, we can skip down to page 4 and begin there. I've already provided a number of changes and edits to Jenny, which is what we're looking at now. So I'm going to start at the end of the table with Jean, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, I sent my comments to Jenny earlier in the day. I don't know if you and Erin had an opportunity.
We did, yeah. We can walk
to
through
look.
them if it would be helpful.
Do you want to do that, or do you want me to do it?
We can do it. Actually, Erin has the what we can include, and then other comments that you have that we wanted to address.
Well, maybe we should do this page by page, and then
Okay.
if other people have comments on the page,
Sure.
they can
Yeah.
do that. My first comment was on page 2. I just wondered if we should list that there's a vacancy. I
Oh,
don't,
yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I would just say that Andy West served through a certain period,
and now vacant.
and then now vacant. Yeah.
So that was my comment on
Yeah,
page
I
2.
can do that.
My next comments were on page 4, so I don't know if anybody else had anything before then. So in the second paragraph on page 4, the last line, I'd suggest adding the word additional before the word affordable. So it'd say additional affordable housing.
Mhm.
The next paragraph down, this is more a wording change. The part that says the experience of many municipalities, I would say particularly when there are not many large-scale developments that exceed. So those are my suggestions there. It's sort of aligning the verb to the noun with a couple changes. That's all I had on that page. Anybody have anything on page 5? Because I do.
I had kind of a high-level question more than a specific edit on page 5. And it had to do with the sentence at the end of the second paragraph, multifamily or mixed-use developments with 4 or 5 residential units would be allowed the density bonus. And I just wanted to talk about whether we, in the report, as opposed to whatever might be in the presentation to town meeting, do we need to be more explicit and more clear about why these smaller developments are getting the bonus by right and what the benefits of doing that are?
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a good idea too. So it would be like because. So you would continue the sentence.
Yeah,
Yes.
because it just, I mean, yes,
Good idea.
that is a true statement, but it doesn't explain the why.
I think that's a good idea.
Do you have any added text, or do you want me to come up with some text?
No, I did not have time
Okay.
to wordsmith it.
Okay.
Okay. I will, how about I come back to that one? Let's maybe keep going then.
Mhm.
So I had something in the previous sentence to that sentence, just some wording changes. So it would say, dimensional bonuses in exchange for a greater number of affordable units than otherwise required.
Mhm.
So it's just sort of a little clarification of that sentence.
Okay.
There are a few places where I added commas. I'm not going to say where I added them.
That's fine.
But there are a few places where
I caught
added
'em.
commas.
Yeah, we'll,
Grammatical changes,
we'll accept them all.
spelling errors,
Yeah.
we can just...
Spaces.
Um,
5?
Anything else on page 5?
No.
Anything on page
Actually, as
6?
we're talking about page 5 with the one we
Sorry.
want to come back to, I think making clear that EDR and special permit review are still required.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they get the density bonus, they still have to
That's not in here anymore.
show their math, so to speak.
As long as we're expanding on that, do we want to also add something that says under whatever the section is now, they can't split the lot in half and develop them without a
says-
2-year.
It
Does
says
it say
something
that?
about that somewhere in here.
It talks about, it's on that page.
Oh, okay.
It may
Great.
be on page 4, but it does talk about how subdividing lots is,
Yeah.
it's
Okay,
page
so-
4. It's
so we don't
it's
have
the
to
next
do
to
it
last
again.
paragraph on page 4. It says the bylaw is currently written explicitly discourages subdivision of lots and phasing of development to avoid affordable housing requirements. It does not reference the 2-year waiting period. Which
Maybe we should
we should
reference.
probably do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Aaron and I discussed this earlier, actually, to state that we think the 2 years should actually be 3 years. Because we think that when that was written in 2005, it was aligned with what the timing is on how long special permits last, which was 2 years. So I think that it should actually read 3 years. That when they sunset.
Except,
They used to sunset after 2 years, now they sunset after 3 years.
except the zoning code says 2, doesn't it?
No, it's 3 years now.
Oh, does
It was
it?
amended
Okay,
in I
fine.
think,
Okay.
4 years ago, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 years then.
I'm
Sorry.
okay with 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, the whole point is to
better.
discourage that, right?
Right.
Exactly.
I just don't know that
Okay.
we can amend that right now. Sorry, I didn't mean to say. I see the point. I don't know that we can amend it in this context. It's likely to need a substitute motion.
All right, now I'm confused. So the current wording is
2 years.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, the current wording
okay.
is 2 years in the zoning bylaw. I'm
So we're
sorry,
gonna
I
have
used
to
it the
change
other
that
day.
next year.
Heard something different. We would.
Yeah,
Well,
I
or
agree.
somebody else can propose a substitute motion to potentially amend that. I just don't know if it's within scope. That's up to the moderator. I'm not. I don't read that as being within the scope of the warrant article, which is to increase affordability. I mean, I see that could be related, but I have not spoken with. We have not spoken with them about that.
We need 10 registered voters then, or how's it?
The substitute motion could be proposed by any town meeting member, and then it has to be signed on to.
Yeah.
And that
Let's not go
happens
down that
typically.
rabbit hole.
It's
But-
not for us to do,
But just procedurally, if in fact the moderator is going to allow Article 16 to be brought up first or near first, then any substitute motions would have to effectively be made prior to the start of town meeting or right at the beginning.
any substitute motions will have to almost every other town meeting that I've attended, they have to be submitted in advance of town meeting by at least a certain number of hours. So I think that
Yeah.
we'll probably know that, by
Right.
next Thursday even, potentially, because Friday is
Well,
holiday.
it goes day by day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I
Yeah.
think though that we
But
will
for the
know.
first
If we
night,
do
yeah.
hear anything, we'll let this board know.
Mhm.
We can leave it at 2 for now. We can always address it next year up to 3 with some of the other changes we want to do.
Sorry to dwell on this topic, but
Yeah,
I
we
just
should-
wanted to I just wanted to let you
Add
know
it
that
to
we
the
just.
list.
We should add that to the list.
Yes.
Yep.
Next.
Oh, actually, there is not a change on page 5, but something I wanted to note. The section on the process for developing these amendments is actually very related to the later section, which is the discussion of why now.
Mm-hmm.
And we may want to think about reorganizing those two sections because
Mm-hmm.
the why now just kind of stops abruptly prior to the timeline, which is the process for developing these amendments. So I just wanted to bring that up while we were
You just-
looking at that. So we may
Switch those
actually want to, well, either bring the why now forward or push the process back to where the why now is.
Yeah,
and,
like this would go before the why now, at the end, towards the end.
well, it follows from after the why now,
Oh, after, okay.
chronologically
Yeah.
anyway.
That actually
I
makes
see
a
It,
lot of sense.
it's
Yeah,
part of
because
the,
the why now
it actually
comes
is
from
part
past.
of the why now.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to it. Just back on the EDR special permit piece that was being raised, did you mean for that to go in the, where were you thinking that part would go? Something about how everything would be required to have an EDR special permit? and that process still exists. Does that, maybe this is Jean's comment.
I didn't say that.
That was my comment.
Your comment,
And I think
sorry.
Jean agreed, but that was,
Where do you want that to
was
go?
the second paragraph on page 5.
Oh, was that also in relation to the
Just
4 and
that.
5 unit developments?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, however, projects such as this would still be
Got it, yeah, thank you. Do you want to come back to the process section and just move through the article description, or what do you want to?
I think we can come back to it when we get to
Yeah,
the
come back
why
to it.
now section and decide where it makes sense to put all of it.
Mhm.
So then Jean had some edits on page 6, just moving around a paragraph. A little bit.
Page 7.
Oh, page 7.
Oh, I
sorry.
had a couple of small things on page 6, which I'll just tell you because I can't send them to you in this form. Like typos. The last sentence in that paragraph at the top, in the public hearings, then it says in the written form. Should that be in written form?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later in that sentence, the feedback was mixed on both sides of the issue, but overwhelming the desire for the town to. I think
Overwhelmingly.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is for.
On page 7, I just suggested moving the sentence in the first paragraph partway down that starts with additionally to the end of that paragraph. It seemed to be out of place where it was. That's all I had on that page.
Is there anything else on 6 or 7?
I took out the words "was common" from that last paragraph before the bolded Article 16.
Where are you, what page?
I'm on page 6, paragraph that begins in late 2017, but all the way at the end of that paragraph, I took out the words "was common" in the
Yeah.
last sentence.
I just deleted that too. Yeah, it reads better that way. It doesn't make sense.
Page 7.
Page 8?
Yeah, just pick up where you have
Yeah. it's-
suggested changes.
don't
I have
think
a
there's-
typo at the bottom of page 8.
At page 8.
Last paragraph in the middle, in conjunction with increase the building heights. I think it should be increasing.
Yeah.
I noticed a typo on 9.
You did.
Right above the table,
Okay.
there's the sentence that introduces what the table is, and there's a
Oh.
reference to multifamily. It should be mixed. And that's the same on page 10.
Now nothing's gonna have a hyphen anymore. Did you see that? All my hyphenating. No longer relevant. Oh, so the other one is the paragraph that begins Article 16 creates incentive FAR requirements. That should be mixed uses.
Yes.
Was there anything else on page 9?
Nope.
10.
Yep. Just jump down to the next one whenever somebody has one.
I don't have anything else till 13.
Gene?
I'm after David, so.
Okay, so let's go down to 13 unless there are any typos. We'll let typos be an administrative matter.
Well, if you find anything,
If we
else,
find
send
any,
it
we're
to us.
working, yeah.
So 13 is where we get back to why now.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, so here it goes back to 1975 and starts moving forward and then ends with a discussion of the adoption of the master plan in 2016. And then the timeline in the earlier section kind of picks up from there
Mm-hmm.
with the subsequent zoning changes that followed from the master plan. So that chronologically, to me, it makes sense that this all be a single timeline. But I also had a question about, aside from the fact that just in terms of the process, the timing makes sense. Like we've gone through all of these steps over these number of years and arrived at this point, and that makes sense. Do we want to talk about in this document other reasons other than the timeline to do it now, or the consequences of not doing it now? And I'm thinking Jenny had a very good discussion of this at the Thompson School the other night, when we were talking about this issue about why are we doing this now, and what happens if we don't do it now.
Yeah.
And we're missing that piece of it in the report.
Yeah, we can do that. Can we just, for a moment though, talk about where to move the rest of that timeline? Just because just to focus on that piece and then go to the other part. Because I'm just looking at it like it literally would go right at the end of that section.
Yeah.
Because it's 2015 and then it's 2015 again.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're good with that.
Mhm.
Just
That makes
wholly
sense to
moving
me.
that whole
Totally
section.
move the section,
Okay.
yeah. Yep, it works.
So on the why now, these were some of the things we talked about. Economic development reasons to support, increased economic opportunity, to address, as a companion to the work that we're already doing, to address the existing vacancies, to allow for expansion of commercial opportunities. On the residential side, it was to address the, frankly, backlog of people who are in need of housing, and to address the wider variety of types of housing that are needed. The other part was related to accessing grants and sort of the
missed
incentives,
opportunities.
the missed opportunities that we've
Mhm.
already missed those opportunities. For example, improvements to infrastructure in the public streetscape. We're unable to access those financial opportunities, capital opportunities, because we are not engaged in advancing housing choice and or economic growth opportunities.
Mhm.
But really it's focused on housing. That's the Baker administration's primary thrust. And so all of the funds that we have been seeking have been tied directly to housing, but we're unable to demonstrate that we are achieving any housing goals locally in order to access those funds. So there is a financial impact to the town by not addressing those goals. So that was, I think, the third thing that I mentioned. I don't remember if there was something else that I mentioned that night. Probably it was about, I think I did talk about displacement,
Mhm.
and I said that that was definitely something that I think about and something that I want to address, but it was not something that we're able to address through the zoning issues.
Mhm.
And then we talked about the 3 different ways in which that could be addressed at another date.
Yeah.
But that, honestly, there's no protection right now for any of those tenants either, with or without the proposed amendment. So
Right.
I think I threw that in there, but mostly
Yeah.
to say there's nothing in existence at the moment that would protect them, but if we wanted to do that, we would have to do that separate from a zoning amendment. It's
Right.
not a zoning change.
Yeah, I mean, I recall you talking about all of those things. I didn't take notes, but it was all, that was, I thought, all very relevant.
Yeah.
And things that we haven't really been talking about,
Mhm.
at least not in the public process. And I
Yeah.
think that was important for people to hear.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that town meeting also hears that.
Okay. Well, we can also put that in here. Not exactly the way that I just said it, but
No, I
And
think
some of that
that's,
is in
that's
here.
really good about having.
Yeah, I agree.
Losing lost opportunity because we're not engaged in some sort of housing plan.
Mhm.
We can't tap into state funds that would be available for infrastructure.
mhm.
That's,
Yeah, infrastructure, streetscapes,
yeah.
many other things, environmental issues, a lot of the things that we heard addressed at the public hearings that aren't really within the zoning bylaw purview, are sort of
That's all tied in.
adjacent to, but it's all tied in, yeah.
I think that was the first meeting where we weren't being recorded.
Not that we know
Anybody
of.
else recording? No, yeah. So yeah, that's all that I recall saying, but I can also brainstorm with a couple of other people who were there that evening,
Mhm.
see if there's something else to add, but
Yeah,
So
I'd like to see that in there.
do you wanna add that in this section or an earlier portion?
I think putting that in with the why now section makes sense.
Yeah,
So that's an
absolutely.
additional justification of why we're doing these things, when we're doing them. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Is there anything more though on this sort of the history and then leading up to now that you wanna,
Not that I had in mind.
you didn't have any of this?
Nope.
No, okay.
Well, where are we next? Let's comment, change, edit.
14.
Jean had a small edit on page 19,
Right, that's
actually.
my next one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else between now and then.
No, I didn't
I don't have anything
have
else
any
till
changes there,
36.
tables or language.
So my edit on 19 was the second bullet to add the word minimum as the second word.
My only comment on that
Mhm.
is that I think it's implied that all of these are minimums because it's all going back to superseding the requirements of section 5.3 where applicable, which are all minimums. So I think if you added it there, you'd have to add it. You'd have to add something about that to all, or you could add it earlier. I just seemed redundant to me
Mhm.
to add that in there. That's my only comment. And then also, these are in the votes now. This is like changing the
Okay,
language.
Yeah.
I'm fine not putting it.
That's right, I took those. Okay. All right. Good.
The next ones were some wording changes on 20, the last 2 paragraphs.
Yeah, we just lost the strikeout.
The strikeout got
Yeah.
lost somehow.
Right.
So we put it back
Okay.
in there.
Okay.
So, what page is this? So there was this XE, I don't know if you all noticed that, throughout the
It's-
document, there was this XE, and I didn't know what it
What
meant.
is that?
It's
What is it?
XE?
so
Yeah,
when
XE.
when I
Where is it?
when we drafted the amendment text, so that I didn't mistype something, I copied and pasted text out of the zoning bylaw.
Mhm.
Internal to the Word document that is the zoning bylaw, there are cross-references with the, not the glossary, the index at the end. So if you were to hover over one of the words with your mouse and the index, I believe it would jump you to where that cross-reference is. So it's doesn't mean anything for the text. It's hidden unless you turn on the paragraph notation.
Okay, so it's gonna be hidden.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a thing that got carried over in the formatting, but it doesn't cross-reference to anything because it doesn't have the rest of the zoning bylaw there.
Okay.
Okay, I was just like, what is this XE that's starting
Yeah.
to appear everywhere?
Okay.
My next one was on page 39, so you had something before. that, right?
36 in the ADU article. One typo in the last sentence. These facts coupled with the number of units, I think it should be. Last sentence.
On what page?
36.
Mm-hmm.
But couple of other more substantive comments. In the middle of that paragraph, it talks about the lockdown date, and it says the lockdown date as proposed in the zoning amendment will determine the date by which new units could be created. That's not quite correct. The lockdown date has to do with the existence of the building envelope, or similar language, however we need to put it. But that was confusing to a lot of people at the two neighborhood meetings that I attended, and so I think we want to be very clear about that we're talking about the actual structure as it existed on that date, but that you could actually create a new ADU after that date.
Oh, yeah. Where are you? Where's that exactly?
That's on page 36 in the middle of that last paragraph.
Oh, okay.
The lockdown date as proposed in the zoning amendment will determine the date by which new units could be created.
Somehow my pagination's not the same as yours.
I'm using the PDF
Yeah,
that
that's the
was
problem.
attached to
I'm
the
using
agenda.
Word.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
you lost a page break when I was looking at your edits.
Right.
Yep.
So it's by which new units could be created and
Well, it's not by which new units should be
No,
created.
it's
It
not.
just locks.
it just
It-
says
it-
the
it-
date that
oh,
the building
new-
existed.
Yeah, well, the building envelope, ADUs can only be created within the building envelope as it existed on that date, even if they're created later.
Mhm.
I think that's what we meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're ready to move on, I have
Yeah.
one more thought on that, on ADUs.
Reminding myself to do that. Yep.
Unless I missed it in the discussion here, it didn't talk about the annual certification requirement, which was also something that seemed to be important to people, and also the discussion that we've had about the public safety potential, where this is an opportunity to bring existing units that are not permitted and not up to code within the permit framework, and to have them known to public safety.
Yeah, it brings them into it gives them an opportunity to comply, and it allows
Yeah.
for additional protection. I think those 2 points go hand in hand with one another.
Wasn't there some talk about some sort of grace or,
Yeah, we were
Yeah,
talking about doing
we
that
did
as
talk
a-
about that,
at
but-
the administrative
It's,
level.
yeah, it's less an issue for the zoning bylaw, more for the
okay.
policy enforcement.
Do we want to mention why we chose not to have an affordability requirement?
Did we put that in here?
It is in there.
Oh, is it?
It's in the second paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay.
I thought we addressed the thing about enforceability, but maybe I'm just remembering.
Okay, it's there, sorry, I missed it.
No, the affordability is, but the enforcement,
Warrant.
did we take that out?
The second sentence in the third paragraph.
Yeah, it does say it allows the town to, it enables the town to
Legal.
properly
Mhm.
approve and enforce these units.
Is that enough? Or do you want to go farther? I'll add the annual certification piece.
Yeah.
I heard that part too.
But also, I thought this gave the flexibility, as Gene said, that if someone lived in a larger home, they can move into the smaller home.
Mhm. That's in that paragraph. Does
And
the
then-
board believe this would be difficult? Yeah, when it
if-
talks about affordability.
Yes.
Does the board believe this would be difficult to administer and enforce, particularly if the homeowner chose to reside in the ADU and rent their principal dwelling unit?
Yeah. And then make the principal unit affordable, defeats the purpose of what.
What the ADU exists for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my comments were in the text of the bylaw itself, which I guess we're not going to change, so we can ignore those.
Can't change the definition. I think we need to, we lost one thing in this, which was the on the form provided by the town.
You're right,
Which would be
In
in
number 4.
B4.
right, so you can add that.
We meant to add that, but.
Yep,
Mhm.
okay,
We definitely talked about that.
We definitely
did.
talked about that,
Yeah.
yes.
okay.
And then the other one was, we actually, in adding A1, that addresses A4, right? The building? No, we
Mhm.
didn't. It is a building.
Yeah, so I rewatched the meeting before this one, and we had talked about in A4 using the word building or structure, but it didn't quite get to the point that the board was trying to make, that the structure entirely, the envelope couldn't change it. So the decision was to add A1 for the gross floor area of the single-family dwelling has not been increased. And then A4 deals with the accessory dwelling unit being contained in that the principal dwelling unit can't be otherwise expanded.
Mhm.
So I think that this is accurate based on that conversation
Okay.
the other night.
Okay. The next one I had was on 41. Shall we go there?
Mhm.
Maybe
Mhm.
it's not 41 and everyone
Yeah, I
else.
think it might be 40. It's just in the
My
sign section,
pagination
right?
got, it's the beginning of discussion of Article 17,
Yes.
sign
39.
regulations.
I have it as 40.
Yeah, mine's 40 now too, yeah.
In discussion, the second sentence, after the word concerns, I wanted to do with the town sign requirements, because it wasn't clear what the concerns were.
Mhm.
So I just add that for
Yeah.
some clarification. And then in the next paragraph, I'd say it's not the importance of Reed, it's the import of the Reed case.
Mhm.
So I would just change importance to import.
Okay.
I don't know if I had any more suggestions after that.
You had something in the driveway slope, Gene.
Oh, I did, right, when we got down there. Well, I had something in 3.5.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's a,
So it should say religious and nonprofit.
I think that
Educational
because of
use.
the warrant language is set as religious and educational use review.
But the Dover Amendment is pretty specific, it's nonprofit,
But
educational.
so then maybe, I mean, I think that that's clear in 48 section 3, but we state what the new section is going to be called.
So we can't change it because the warrant article doesn't have the word.
I think that limits it
nonprofit.
pretty far, yes.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to think of another way to handle it. Isn't it clear in the notes, in the footnotes,
Yeah. I think when you're
looking at the
How,
uses?
how about if we said, so let's take the sentence, the Arlington Redevelopment Board shall adopt rules and regulations, implement the requirements of jail, chapter 40, section 3 for religious and nonprofit educational use. Or just leave it the way it is and we'll just know what it means?
I think leave it the way it is.
Okay,
You know what it
okay.
means.
Yeah, we can leave it the way it is and know what it means, and then amend it next year when it's in scope.
Or when we write the rules and
But
regulations.
the rules and
we
regulations
can
is where
put
we're
it
gonna
in.
do the work.
That's true,
Right.
too.
So I
Yeah.
think
Right.
that's
Okay.
what we
That's
agreed to
fine.
do.
Mhm. All right. Anything else in between? Anywhere else in the document?
I had nothing further.
I think there's just one more thing from Jean,
Okay.
which Aaron mentioned.
Ah, Article 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do is say, third, in the discussion, however, the limited scope of the warrant article did not allow for that further clarification to be addressed in a proposed amendment or the vote.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I have one big picture thing for this that I didn't put in there. This is like really big. And if I'm gonna be sitting at town meeting, I'm like, I think we need like a one-page chart
Mhm.
that sort of has like Article 16 and the two things it does, and something like, if Article 16 is passed, then list all the other articles that these would then need to be passed to conform to the new Article 16, and then just a really brief headline about what the others are. So if somebody doesn't, they got to 63 pages, but they can just turn, and here's a
Mhm.
one-page chart that they can look at.
Have you been following the Brexit flowcharts?
No, I have not. I have a feeling this is not Brexit. But anyhow, that would be my one big
Okay.
I like that idea.
picture.
Mhm.
Is it something we can?
Yeah, I mean, we
Put out,
have basically
produce.
a one-pager that we produced after last Wednesday night to announce to people where we were at.
Okay.
I think we can just jump off of that and use
And,
Jean's.
Make it even
suggestion.
more simple.
Yes, more simplified, definitely.
and a few folks were talking with me after one of the neighborhood meetings, and they asked for something which I had talked about at our last meeting, which was some kind of animation showing the effects of the actual zoning changes on a hypothetical build out.
Mhm.
And specifically in comparison to the current rules, and what the difference would end up being in what's
Yeah, so we
buildable.
have the build-out analyses that we've been using since the summer, which would probably be helpful as part of the presentation, which we had talked about last week.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense to
Mhm.
use and maybe make those available.
We're also working with Alexis to update some of those things that we looked at in one
Mhm.
of the meetings. So she's doing that, I think, for next week, basically, or maybe this week.
Yep.
Okay.
One thing to come out of the meeting I went to on Hardy, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions came up was all this new housing that we're encouraging to be developed by allowing for this increased density. It also gives a provision to allow for more aging in place and handicapped housing to be developed.
Mhm.
Right.
Because once you go higher, once you go above 3 stories, you got to go in an elevator. I think that was a good point. We should make it somewhat, I don't know, a little small
Mhm.
paragraph is sort of
Yeah,
somewhere.
increasing the accessibility aspect of things is a good point.
Just putting it somewhere, I don't know where, but that was a good point that was brought up at the last meeting.
Okay, yeah, I remember that at the end of the meeting. I'll just throw it in here for now.
Okay, but I don't know where it goes, but
Yeah, I'll just,
I thought that was real good.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on the report itself? All right, so we would vote to endorse it as amended,
yes, yeah.
and then
adopt
authorize,
it as amended.
adopt it as amended, and then authorize the staff to make administrative, typographical and clerical changes, plus the one paragraph regarding why now.
Yep.
Okay. It's a terrible motion, but I'll put it up there.
So motioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Okay,
Good work. Thank you all for
thank you.
getting into that. It was long.
Well, I'd like to thank the two ladies here for working so hard on this.
Thank Aaron and Jenny for their hard work to
I mean, this
put
was
together, yes.
This was quite a bit of
For sure.
undertaking, you know.
There's 44 other pages if you hadn't read them yet. That's the sign bylaw section.
Yeah. I didn't think we'd get too deep into that.
No, you didn't,
So,
but.
okay, so that's that.
And I have read that in detail.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah. So
Trust you
what-
guys.
What will happen is we're gonna make these amendments tomorrow morning, and then we're gonna issue the report to town meeting. And the question right now is how many paper copies we have to make, and I'm working on that with Joan and the moderator to determine exactly what is necessary, because half of the town meeting members actually still want a paper version. The rest of them are okay with everything being electronic, even though the move was to be electronic. So that will be at a cost. I have yet to figure that out exactly just yet, but we're working on that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we're gonna issue this electronically.
When's the due date?
I mean, it could be it could be delivered to town
Oh,
meeting
so-
technically, but we wanted to try to get it
Right.
out
Right.
around the same time
Yeah.
usually that the select board issues theirs. Usually ours is smaller and we actually can go out with the select board,
All right.
but not this time,
Do
clearly.
like postage.
The postage, and-
Mhm.
yeah,
Mm.
be nice to not have to mail it.
Can we just
So-
put it by the rear door there and have people pick it up as they, would that save?
So we made about 200 copies of the recodified bylaw and copies of the old bylaw last year. About half of them, more than half of them, were thrown out, and that cost us a lot of money, the town a lot of money, thousands of dollars actually, in making paper copies. So, and those were 100-page documents. So I am trying really hard to figure out exactly how many we're going to need and then how we're going to distribute them. In all likelihood, it would be at the back of the room, but I have yet to figure out the details. So, and then the 1-page document, we might not have that tomorrow, but we'll work on that to make sure it's available.
Okay.
The sort of cliff notes. So, okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Anything else on the reports to town meeting? Do we want to talk about presentation at town meeting, or are we not there yet? I know it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, but also we have the meeting minutes, if we could do those.
I will.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe we'll do that first. and
Okay.
then-
All right, so meeting minutes from March 18th. Any comments?
I have 3 potential
Okay.
edits. The very first line, I think it should say he stated that the March 25 meeting, not stated that on March 25.
Mhm.
So I changed the on to the. In the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, her actual name is Shanna, Shanna, not Shauna Cleveland. I know that because
Oh,
I know her. Not well, but a little bit. And then this sentence just didn't sound right to me, but I don't remember what it was. So the bottom of the first page where it talks about Pam Halleck, she stated there are unutilized parking spaces in buildings. Yes, she did that. But then and some residents are taking unauthorized advantage. I don't know what that meant, or
She was saying residents from the neighborhoods surrounding
that's what
those
she- that's what
properties
it
are
is. Yeah,
using.
that's
so
not
we
there.
should probably
Yeah.
put that in there,
Yeah.
just substitute
surrounding
the more
neighborhood.
specificity.
Yeah, some
Thank you.
residents from the surrounding neighborhood.
Are using the
mm-hmm.
otherwise underutilized parking spaces. That makes a lot more sense than what's in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, those are my only changes.
Anyone else? All right, so we can take a motion to approve these as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye. All right. Anything else? Any comments from members of the public this evening? All right, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn unless you want to talk about town meeting presentation, but I'm happy to adjourn and talk about that offline after the
think-
report's finalized.
Yeah, I think after we finalize the
Okay.
report would be better.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.